In order to understand what happened on September 5, 2017 to Gauri Lankesh, one has to go back in time to what India once was and what it has become, and where Karnataka, and especially Bangalore, now officially known as Bengaluru, fits into. And what better way to do that than to revisit pages 95 to 99 of Rollo Romig's book I Am on the Hit List, published in 2024 in America by Penguin Random House. Quote, Bangalore is by many metrics unimpressive. It wasn't a significant enough city to appear on most maps of India printed before the late 20th century, and it didn't merit mention in the great Indian epics or any other ancient scripture. It has no monuments or attractions spectacular or exotic enough to wow a tourist, just 2 rambling gardens and a crumbling palace, as one disappointed visitor put it. But it's been described as the only true multilingual metropolis in India, a city where Tamil, Telugu, Hindi, Urdu, Malayalam, Deccani, and English are as alive in the streets as the state's official language of Kannada. Bengaluru's biggest gift to its residents, writes Nisha Susan, is the confidence to speak whatever you speak badly and get on with your life. Jewelers here speak 5 languages, and so do cooks. You can watch movies in at least 6 languages every week. And in a world that prizes English as the language of employment, it's fantastic to see Bengaluru residents with linguistic confidence go at English too, without worrying that they are bad at it. Girish Karnad, for example, grew up speaking Konkani, wrote his plays in Kannada or English, depending on how the muse struck, and did his own translations into Marathi. If today Bangalore is known as an easygoing place, it wasn't always that way. It was for many years a British colonial military zone, which can still be detected in many of its street names: Brigade Road, Infantry Road, Cavalry Road, Artillery Road. Its founder was a warlord, Kempe Gowda, who built a mud fort on the site in 1537, although he also had a talent for urban planning. Bangalore is the only major city in India that wasn't built on a seacoast or the banks of a great river, and Kempe Gowda's solution was to design an ingenious system of interlinked artificial lakes that harvested groundwater and rainwater and irrigated the city's many gardens and eliminated the threat of floods. The Mughals, in their heyday, conquered Bangalore in 1687, but it interested them little enough that they sold it 2 years later for 300,000 rupees to some Hindu royal allies, the Wodeyars, who absorbed the city into their Mysore kingdom. In 1766, the Wodeyars' leading general usurped the throne and put the Wodeyars under house arrest. His name was Hyder Ali, and his son was Tipu Sltan, who has become one of the most polarizing figures in the history of Karnataka. To this day, people argue over whether he should be celebrated or denounced. Right-wing activists dismiss him as a despotic Muslim foreign invader, although he, his father, and his grandfather were all born in what's now Karnataka. In response, Gauri defended his legacy repeatedly in her columns. Girish Karnad went further, calling him the greatest Kannadiga of the past 500 years. Today, everyone knows how closely Bangalore is tied to the United States via the outsourcing of IT and call center jobs. But the connection goes back centuries. In 1770s America, there was a fad of naming racehorses after Tipu Sltan and Hyder Ali. For decades, the father-son duo was virtually alone in their struggle to thwart British ambitions to seize all of India. They resisted the British East India Company in a series of fierce wars with widespread British atrocities: mass rape, slaughter of civilians, destroying whole villages with fire. Other Indian Maharajas and Nawabs ruling other regions of India, were happy to collaborate with the British as long as their personal interests were protected. But Hyder Ali and Tipu loathed the British. In 1781, General Charles Cornwallis surrendered to French and American forces at Yorktown, Virginia, effectively ending the American Revolutionary War. Cornwallis was appointed Governor-General of India. Fresh from his humiliation in America, he arrived in India determined to crush Tipu Sultan. Tipu had a technological advantage. He had developed what were, at that time, the world's most sophisticated military rockets. Each Indian battalion has 200 rocketeers in place, writes the historian Michael Hamilton Morgan, armed with ample supplies of rockets capable of traveling 1,000 yards and tipped with lethal warheads, including gunpowder charges, pointed tips, and even a kind of whirling blade that shreds everything on point of impact like a meat grinder. Yet in the 1791 Battle of Bangalore, the bloodiest episode in the city's history, Cornwallis conquered Tipu. And British domination of South India commenced. After killing Tipu in his 1799 last stand, the British installed the 5-year-old heir of the pliable Wodeyar royal family on the Mysore throne. They pillaged Tipu's legendary library and captured his stockpile of rockets, which they reverse-engineered and renamed, in classic colonizer style, Congreve rockets. It was these rockets, based on Tipu's design, which the British bombarded Fort McHenry in the War of 1812, as witnessed by Francis Scott Key, which inspired him to write the line, "And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air," in the US national anthem. In India, the British flaunted their victory over Tipu by making Bangalore their primary military base in the south. This began Bangalore's long period as a bifurcated, segregated town. Kannada-speaking Indians lived in the city, a place dense with flat-roofed mud houses and noisy with the clack of silk and cotton looms. British officers and their Indian servants lived in the Cantonment, a place of parade grounds, race tracks, and stately yet eccentric colonial bungalows, with deep verandas and distinctive slanted monkey-top hoods over their doors and windows. Rarely did the two Bangalores meet. The spaciousness, wealth of colour, peace, restfulness, and beauty, none of this belonged to us, wrote a Kannada playwright in the 20th century. It was produced by the unconscious, alienated labour of our people for the foreigners. If we could forget this, we might enjoy it, but not even a moment's interaction with the English allowed you to forget that fact. With independence in 1947 came the unification of city and cantonment. Over decades, the two hemispheres of Bangalore have become incrementally less distinguishable, but an invisible gulf persists. As Raghu Karnad has written, "The separateness of city and Kent was the main expression in my life of all that was colonially designed and had to be post-colonially denied. Soon, though, a new and different bifurcation divided the city between techies and everyone else." Building on the talent that emerged from the city's science schools and laboratories, the newly independent Indian government made Bangalore the country's state technology and scientific research centre and the site of a multitude of giant public sector units such as Hindustan Aeronautics, Bharat Electronics, and the Indian Space Research Organisation. It's been said that the modern Indian middle class was born in Bangalore, the first place in India where technical skills could generate a comfortable living on a mass scale. And in 1992, India began rapidly liberalizing its economy, abandoning socialism in favor of free market capitalism. Homegrown tech companies flourished, especially those that specialized in outsourcing. Infosys, Wipro, TCS. Today, these Bangalore firms employ armies of engineers who work around the clock to keep the invisible infrastructure of Western corporations running. And Bangalore is both the international headquarters of back-end tech labor and India's startup capital. Unquote. In I Am on the Hit List, Rollo Romick imagines the likely route Gauri Lankesh took on that fateful evening as she drove home. At 7:30 p.m. on September 5, 2017, Gauri Lankesh drives from her office back home. She passes through the BMS College for Women, which is near her office, then moves along with the traffic down 50 feet road. Gauri makes a turn to enter Mysore Road, which runs alongside the twists and turns of the Vrishabhavati River and repeatedly crosses it. She passes the high-end Birla Apple Spire luxury apartment complex, which was under construction in 2017. She passes the R.R. Nagar Archway and the Gopalan Arcade shopping mall right next to it. When she reaches Netaji Memorial Park, which is near her home, in the Raja Rajeshwari Nagar suburb, two people on a single motorcycle start following her. 7 people have done a recon of her movements over the course of a few weeks. A corner away from the modest park is her single-story house in a locality called Ideal Homes Layout. And these 2 men on the motorcycle, these 2 strangers, these people who had nothing in common with the 51-year-old, they hadn't studied with her, worked with her, and indeed, by all accounts, had never even met her or spoken to her. They follow her there, to her home, in the Ideal Homes locality, to carry out a death sentence against her. Who were these men? Find out in the next episode.